Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Females Thriving Over 30 podcast. Today, I am with someone so exciting and so gorgeous. Everybody that is watching this, you are going to say, yes, she's right. She's beautiful. So today I am joined by Gina Broadhurst. She is the current Miss Great Britain Classic and she's 48 years old. And if I'm not mistaken, this was her very first pageant and she won it on the very first try. So welcome, Gina, to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very well. It's a very horrible rainy Tuesday in May. I don't know why it's so rainy and disgusting, but I'm having a good day.
I was literally going to ask you, so how are you feeling? Because the weather is horrible.
Yeah. So it's a funny week in our house this week because my youngest child is on a residential trip all week. So my older daughter is pretending to be an only child and indulging herself in every way possible. So it's kind of peculiar week for me. So it's quite nice to get lots of mummy daughter time.
Yeah, oh, that's nice. That's very nice.
Yeah.
So obviously I said a little bit about you. I introduced you a little bit, but we always prefer for our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves because who knows you better than yourself?
Mm-hmm. So
So, yeah,
from
go
the
ahead.
top. So I am the reigning Miss GB Classic. You can see that from the crown, but that's only been a millisecond of my 48 years. It's probably more impactful on my life for 25 plus years, my career. I was a corporate girl commuting into London and I worked in sales and marketing, predominantly in advertising with big brands like Channel 4, Capital Radio, Discovery Channel. And that very much shaped kind of my adult years. It's how I met my husband. And then I left corporate life in 2018 and I now run my own business with my husband, which has taught me a whole load of other stuff, but enabled me to use all the stuff that I learned in my corporate career and kind of apply it to my own business, which is quite cool. And now I'm a mum, so I've got another facet. And I'm always doing 52 things at once. That's sort of my personality. I like to spin a lot of plates. I've got a lot
I can
going on.
relate to that.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. I am the same. Sometimes I'm just thinking like, why do I want to do all of these things all at once? And I don't know if it has something to do with our generations, like, my generation, your generation, how we were brought up compared to kids nowadays. I don't know if you that have kids from like these younger generations, if you see any difference.
Yeah. So I just watched the trailer for your episode that's just gone, is going live on Thursday, and you were talking about doing homework and using an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
That's my generation. So I take my children to the library very often in Walton-on-Thames. My son reads a book a week. You know, he is like a voracious reader at 10 years old. So I couldn't possibly buy enough books. I'd be bankrupt to keep him happy. So we use the public library a lot. And whenever we walk to the library, I always bore them to tears with my tales of when I was a young lady and I'd go to the library and and I do all this and I tell them that if you did your homework, you had to get a book out the library. And, it's exactly what you're going to cover in your podcast. So, yeah, absolutely, that resonates with me. My children's attention span is nanoseconds. They have no attention span because they live in on-demand society. Everything is on demand, and consequently they are impatient and they are dissatisfied if everything isn't immediate. I used to love Grange Hill. I used to love Stig of the Dump, like real 80s TV, Wurzel Gummidge. And you would watch your favourite show and then you would wait 7 days. And you would also go home if you were playing out with your friends, we would all play out in the street in summer till it got dark. But you would go home because your favourite show was on at 7 o'clock. So you had to be
True.
home. And they just sit on the couch and are like, beep, beep, next one, next one. And I'm like, that's why you're impatient, because the world has made you so. We're creating a generation of potential monsters, aren't we, really? But
I agree. And like what you just said, like I was exactly the same way as you. Like when I was growing up, we had to wait for our show to come on. We will watch the show, wait till the next week, watch the next episode. Sometimes
and
if
you
we couldn't
talk about
watch
it all
it,
week at school or with your friends. What's going to happen? There's a
yes,
cliffhanger. It was. I worked in TV for many years. Water cooler moments is what they. That's what executive
yes,
producers
yes,
of TV shows dream of. Having the water cooler moment, being the zeitgeist, being the thing that what we would now say would be the thing that would go on Gogglebox. So I worked at Channel 4
yes.
when Gogglebox was created. The producer that created that, it was created down the pub, and he was having a chat. We were talking about water cooler moments. Do you think there are people in pubs all across the UK having this same conversation about what's just happened in Celebrity Big Brother? And you could just see the light bulb go on above this executive producer's head, and he was like, I've got an idea. And that was Gogglebox, and it's different now, isn't it? Because people just binge watch and they box set or whatever the terminology is, and then I don't know, it sort of takes
Yeah, but
the I don't know, the moment
yeah,
away a little bit.
yeah. And the thing is, like, I do feel that myself because I'm coming from a generation that was doing that, like waiting, and I was used to that. And then now we are going to start a new show, and you have the whole season in, and I
Yes.
cannot just watch one episode. I
No.
have to watch them all, And I'm like,
I think
what
it's
have I
changing
become?
everyone's it's changing everyone's personality, and I can't blame my children for being impatient and having less focus, because that's what we've given them, right?
Yeah.
You kind of open Pandora's box. But then also I have a real issue. I am basically becoming an old grouchy old fart, but when I'm driving in my car, people use Waze and route finder apps, and they just put the destination in, and then they just blindly follow, turn left, turn right, do this, do that, and they actually have no concept of where they're going. They don't know where they're going, where they are. So if their phone ran out of battery, lost in the wilderness.
My biggest fear.
And I swear it has made people much worse drivers, because they're not concentrating on what they're doing. They're just, back in the back in the old days, I used to get an A to Z out, and I used to be like, right, I have to go to Finchley, so North London. I'm in Surrey, south of London, and I'd plan a little route, and I'd write myself a little plan, do this, and then I'd ring my mum and I'd go, Mum, if it's really busy in this place in London, where's a back route? And she'd be like, right. And and you'd have to get quite smart, and then you'd learn your way around. Now I like, it's definitely dumbing me down using Waze, because I don't have to think when I drive. I just so I just think
Yeah.
people's memory must be, because memory's like a muscle, isn't it? If you don't use it, you lose
Yeah,
it. I do
I agree.
worry
Like,
that my kid, like phone numbers, I used to know everyone's phone number off by heart. I don't know anyone's phone number anymore. I just press a button and it rings them. I just think our memories are becoming, I don't know, they're fading away. Well, mine is anyway, but
yeah, yeah. So obviously you are been in the world for a long time,
yes.
in the sense of you just mentioned that you've been working in corporate world for many years,
Mm-hmm.
and you have actually been working in like some jobs that are quite high profile, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel getting into your 30s with the way or the mentality that your generation had of going into 30s? Is that something that, like, did you expect your life to be the way that it was when you turned 30?
No.
Were you in
So,
the in the career that you wanted at 30? Tell us a little bit about that.
so I joined Channel 4 I want to say when I was 30, maybe 2006. Yeah, I think I joined Channel 4 when I was 30, and I was there for 10 years. And I joined a team called Sponsorship and Promotions. So we were part of the advertising sales team. So there was a big team that sold all the adverts that you see on Channel 4. But we were a small team of like 12 who did really specialist version of advertising. We created sponsorships for TV shows. So we would pitch to brands like British Airways, Coca-Cola, NatWest, whoever, Jamie Oliver. And then we would create, if they bought so Wrigley's sponsored Hollyoaks for many years with me, for example, then I would work with Wrigley's creative agency, media agency and PR agency and create the bumpers that went around the programme. So there's a kind of hybrid role of creative, because you did creative selling and work with creative agencies, and sales, negotiation. I used to do kind of, the biggest deal I ever did there was £8 million a year. So I did a £24 million negotiation. He trusted me to do it. So yeah, it was kind of a really cool role because it was very cerebral and serious and, high ticket, but also very sexy and cool and kind of creative and fun. I just had I was very lucky. I was very passionate about my career. I was very enthusiastic. I loved it. It was really hard and long hours and hard work, but the payoff was there and it made it all worth it. And I made brilliant friends, met my husband, was there 10 years, and I progressed up to quite a senior level. But no, my life was definitely not how I expected it to be, because at 30, I don't think I was single, but I wasn't with my husband. I met my husband when I was 33. And I remember being single at about 32, breaking up with a long-term boyfriend, the last boyfriend I ever had, because I knew it wasn't going to work, didn't want to have children. And I thought in the back of my mind that I did want to have children, but just not with this person. I'm thinking, God, I'm 32, I'm single, I go out about 5 nights a week, I'm definitely drinking too much. How's this going to pan out? I was a bit of a party animal, work hard, play hard. And working in advertising, it was easy to do that. I was up in town, very easy to go to the pub after work, all of that. And I was like, I'm not settled. I'm still acting as though I'm 21, had a word with myself.
Yeah.
And then went, oh, well, carry on having fun. And met my husband. And it was all fine. And it all worked out beautifully. What was meant for me was meant for me, But I definitely had a wobble at one point thinking, I'm not following the well-trodden path. I was definitely doing it my way. And occasionally I would fret about that and then think, oh, sod it. I'll just carry on doing it my way and not worry about it. So that I just think trust your gut. If what you're doing isn't hurting anybody else and isn't hurting you, so, I drank an awful lot. Probably I wasn't super healthy. I did party quite hard, so I probably could have cut back on the drinking. But other than that, I wasn't hurting anyone else. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I wasn't, I was just doing my thing. So I think trust your gut, and it'll all come good in the end.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that you were just talking about, and I think it's really interesting for us to talk about, because we have not had any guests so far in the podcast that has had children later in life. So like later in their 30s, which I presume you have, because you said you met your husband at 33. So you have had kids after
I was 36 when I had my daughter. I was 36, and then I was 37 when I had my son.
How was that journey, taking into account that back then it was just like, oh, you're too old to have kids. And still, that is changing slowly. Kind of like the narrative is changing slowly, but still, it's like you're too old to have kids.
So there's a medical term called prima gravida. And prima gravida means you're an old geriatric mother. You're classed as geriatric once you're over about 32, I think, some crazy number like that, because the risks are heightened for various complications and things like Down syndrome. And so they write this all over your notes. And at 36, you definitely don't feel like a geriatric. And it's a bit like, I don't like that label. And funnily enough, when I was competing in Miss Great Britain last year, I did a series called Live for Now, which was my kind of mantra. It was my, I wouldn't quite call it a platform, but it was my campaign around demystifying midlife and just challenging the preconception that once a woman hits midlife, it's all cocoa and slippers and she should just, quietly disappear off into the background. And my life absolutely propelled and rocketed in my midlife. My midlife has been an amazing period for me, really productive, creative. I've challenged myself mentally and physically and done loads of cool stuff. And I wanted to share that with other women and encourage them to view midlife as an exciting new chapter and not some kind of horrendous perimenopausal mess. And one of my guests on my, it was like a little mini series on Instagram, was her Instagram handle is actually geriatric mum. And for the same reason, so she had kids and then she had a long break and then she had a son when she was 40. And she said people would come up to her spontaneously and say, you shouldn't be having children in your 40s, it's so selfish. And they would pour their judgment out on her. And she's just like, whoa, I can do whatever I want. And so she's now on a bit of a campaign through media to talk about that in the press. And she's been on things like This Morning and Good Morning Britain. And she's an amazing lady and she's full of wisdom. But yeah, it is interesting. Motherhood, in every decade of your life, you get a different label attached to you. Young mums, judgment are poured on them. If you're a teenager, judgment. If you're in your 40s, judgment. I think whenever you have kids, everybody else thinks it's their job to tell you their opinion, but actually, it's your body and your kids. Nobody else's business. Whether you're 18 or 38, who gives a rat's ass what anyone else thinks? So, yeah.
Yeah, we get judged regardless, right? Regardless what we do, there is always going to be someone judging us or telling us, "Oh, why are you doing this?" Or, "Oh, look at her, what she's done." So there's no
And
winning.
my daughter now is 12, and she's amazing. Every day she says something, and I go, "Oh God, I'm really old-fashioned." So I will occasionally say things about one of her friends, and I'll say, "Oh, friend XYZ, I think this," and I will share an opinion with her, and she will say, "You can't say that. Don't judge someone on their looks. You can't comment on someone's body. You can't that's bullying." And sometimes some of her commentary on my opinions is a bit over the top, but actually at the essence of what she's saying is her generation are way more empathetic, emotionally aware of how they speak about other people. In my day, my parents and grandparents would pick you and poke you and prod you.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on a second. And they would feel it was okay to comment on your weight, your hair, your appearance, your demeanor. And nowadays the girls, even at 12, they're very aware that that's not cool. Don't do that. Don't judge me. Don't judge my friend. And she reminds me if I slip to be better, which is good.
Yeah. No, true. True, because I think it is quite hard when you've been growing up with people telling you all these things and like always picking you apart and all of that, for you not to unconsciously do the same sometimes. So it's good to have that kind of a reminder of like, oh yeah, actually, that is not cool. Yeah, we shouldn't be
So
doing
we're
that.
very tolerant in our household of LGBTQ plus. We don't talk about relationships in boxes. You know, I don't expect my son to marry a girl or my daughter to marry a boy, or in fact anyone to marry anyone. You know, they may not even get married. We always just say love is love. People can love whoever they want. I don't care what colour they are, what race they are, what religion they are, or what gender they are. Or indeed, if they even have a gender, they can be non-binary. I'm cool with that. So we have a lot of that kind of chat in our house. And I really, you know, that is inconceivable to my brain in my past, in my upbringing, that we would have had those sorts of conversations. My parents would not have had those sorts of conversations. So I think that's really healthy. That my kids are growing up in such an it can be such an accepting and diverse world.
Have you found that being a mom later in your time has helped you maybe navigate these things better than if you had them earlier?
I think yes, because I'm, dare I say, a little bit wiser than I used to be. I don't know that I'm wiser. I just have more perspective. I have more experience. And I am less hot-headed. I am more able, I have a greater capacity for patience. I have a greater capacity for, you really have to be selfless as a mother, you really do. It can be a very thankless task. I sound so defeated when I say that, but it's true. You really have to, at times, just really put yourself in the back seat. And when I was younger, I would have found that very challenging. I would have been more argumentative and pushed back on things. You have to pick your battles with children. It's not good to be hard on them. You got to kind of clamp it shut sometimes. And I probably wouldn't have had the ability to do that when I was younger. I was a lot more feisty. I was a bit more high maintenance. I'm pretty low maintenance now. I just can't be bothered. I'd much rather have an hour in bed. I'd just much rather have a kip. Can't be asked to be high maintenance anymore at all.
I mean, it's good. It's good. I mean, as I said, like usually sometimes experience is what makes us be able to navigate these things better than when we were younger. And many times we will be thinking, as we were talking at the beginning, like, I am not where I thought I was going to be at this moment in life. And you might feel a little bit like, I'm running behind. Why is this not happening? But maybe it's because we needed that experience, because what we needed to navigate needed that experience.
Or you still need to meet a certain person, or take a certain job, or make a certain decision. I can pinpoint a few key decisions that I've made in my life that I always call it the sliding doors moment. The movie Sliding Doors. Definitely, I've got a few sliding doors moments where, if I had not done X, or not spoken to Y, or been at a certain place, or my whole life would be different.
Can you tell us some of those sliding door moments?
Well, I met my husband at Channel 4. If I hadn't taken that job, I never would have met him. And there are many, many pivotal moments that quite a few where I've really made big fundamental decisions. And my whole life has,
like joining Miss GB last year.
Yeah, entering Miss Great Britain was one. That was really on a whim of something a bit frivolous that I really had never thought about, never even permeated my brain. I knew about Miss Great Britain, always had done. I used to know a girl a few years ago who ran Miss Great Britain. But Miss Great Britain then was just Miss Great Britain. There was no other age categories. I had no idea that there was Ms or even Classic. I sort of stumbled across it. I'd been having a bit of a rough time with perimenopause. Just thought it'd be quite fun. It was a bit of fun. Totally changed the last 12 months of my life. And, and it's still ongoing for another 6. So, and what will come off the back of that? Who knows? Who knows what will come as a result of doing so? And the people I've met and the places I've been, and, all of that. So, yeah.
Amazing. I mean, you just like now mentioned a little bit about your, you were going through a rough time because of the perimenopause. And one of the things that you've mentioned and you've
Mhm.
talked about as well as part of your time as a finalist and now as a queen had to do
Yes.
with menopause. So tell us a little bit about that, especially for people that might be listening and now are going through the same
Mhm.
things that you have gone through and
So
are going
at the
through.
moment in the UK, there are 13 million women who are either in the menopause or perimenopause. So there's a lot of women. Not everybody will know.
Mm.
The symptoms of perimenopause are so wild and crazy, some of them, that you would never attribute them to perimenopause. I mean, itchy ears. I mean, what is that? But it's a really well reported bizarre side effect. You can get palpitations so bad that you think you're having a panic attack. Dry, itchy, the feeling like things are crawling under your skin. Electric sensations like electric shocks, really cold fingers and toes, hot flashes, cold flashes. I mean, literally, you could write a book with all the weird, different ways it can make you feel. Blinding headaches, which is what I suffered with. Crushing exhaustion. The symptoms a little bit like dementia. I would lose words. I just lose words. I would look at something, an object, and I would know what it was, but I couldn't tell you the name. And I was 40, 41, 42, and I'd say to my husband, "Can you pass me that?" And I'd point, and he'd go, "What? Say the word." And I'd be like, "I don't know it." And he'd say chair, and I'd be like, "Yeah, of course, pass me the chair." But like that word was not in my. I honestly, I thought I was going mad. Um, and the GPs didn't take me seriously because unless you're 45, as soon as you hit 45, then anything that you go to them about, they could in theory attribute it to perimenopause. If it falls within a certain set of symptoms that they recognise, as soon as you hit 45, the NICE guidelines state that, okay, this is likely to be menopause. Sub 45, dependent totally on the postcode lottery and your GP and how well trained they are and who you get and a million other factors, you probably just get told, oh, it's anxiety. Have some antidepressants. That is a very common response. It's anxiety, have some antidepressants. So women get given antidepressants. It's not depression, it's menopause. Sadly, the age range where women are most likely to commit suicide is 45 to 55.
Right when you
Or
are
not
going
knowing
through
that you're
it.
going through it, and you start to think you're going bonkers. Yeah, you do. You think it can make you feel mental. Unexplained rage, absolute boiling rage, like the sound of someone breathing next to you in the queue in Tesco's, if that's what sets you off, and you could literally commit a murder, that level of rage, boiling rage, completely irrational. And when you know what it is, you can deal with it. But when you don't know why you're feeling like that, it's debilitating. And I was reading a statistic the other day. 900,000 women in the UK have left their job, their career, and some of these women, it's a 25, 30-year career, due to menopause, because they have been unable to function at the level that required. So let's say you're a barrister and you're a criminal barrister and you need to stand up and you need to give a speech and keep someone out of prison or put someone in prison, and you're losing words and you're feeling rage and you're aching and all of that. You're unable, your capacity to do your job is diminished. People, and it doesn't matter, you could be sitting on the checkout at Tesco, you don't have to be a high powered job. But 900,000 women in the UK have left a job because of menopause. That's a terrible statistic. It's awful. So all those women with all that skill and experience that should be in the workforce are coming out of those jobs because they don't feel competent and capable to do them, because they feel too unwell for something that could just be not fixed, but the the NHS in Britain doesn't have enough specialist knowledge of the menopause. They don't get enough in-depth training in their medical training as a medical student. It's touched upon very lightly. So people like Menopause Mandate, who've been doing a lot of work in the UK to improve the menopause landscape, have lobbied for a couple of things, and one is greater menopause training for GPs. The other is to put the menopause on the curriculum for primary schools, because that's the other problem. Nobody ever used to talk about the menopause, ever. It was totally taboo. Your gran or your mum probably never talked about it because it had a stigma attached to it. And so kids didn't even know it existed. Girls who were going to have this happen to them, and little boys whose wives, mums, aunties, sisters were going to have it, didn't even know it existed. So now actually it has been put on the curriculum for primary schools. Obviously at a slight depth, they're not going to bombard children with scary information, but so as the generations come through now, they're going, the menopause landscape will be radically different. A little like we were talking about how, my daughter behaves. I think information is power, and that gradual wash of information as those children age, society's attitudes to menopause will change. But I'm very, very passionate on this topic. Very passionate.
Yeah, I mean, and you should be, because as we have just mentioned, like, it's not talked about. It's like many things regarding women has always been taboo, and I think now is the time to be able to speak about it for more people to know about it. Because if we don't speak and we don't share our experiences, no one is gonna know. I didn't know that, like, the only well, no, I was not gonna say side effect, but the only symptom of menopause that I've known of was the hot flashes. I didn't know that you could just like forget words.
But I get many other things that are way, way more interesting. That's the thing. Every woman is different, so there is no blueprint. And what works for one woman in terms of managing her symptoms won't necessarily work for another. So it is a bit of a lottery as to how it affects you, and then the care that you receive. It will be based entirely on which GP and how knowledgeable they are, and whether you get the right information or the wrong information. I got told wrongly for many years that I couldn't have HRT. It was completely wrong, and I could, but I could only have a certain form because I have a rare blood condition, and it took about 7 years to unravel that. And it was just because they told me the wrong information for many years. I never even really got sorry. They never really apologised. They just went, "Oh, did we say that? Oh no, that's wrong. Oh yeah, great."
It's very interesting because we, like, two things that you just mentioned now, when we're talking about this, is things that we have touched base in other episodes talking about very different things. So one of them was we were talking about autism and like diagnosis, and how the NHS is not equipped, and they are unless you are like right in their face with the exact
Yep.
things, they won't diagnose you. Many things are only done, many studies are only done in men. So then when it happens to women, they kind of like dismiss that. And the other one was about one of the um, advice, right? That was like, what advice would you give to your women in your 30s? And it was like, start taking HRT. Even if they tell you no, you
Well,
can.
HRT is interesting, right? Because there was a big study done a few years ago, and it attributed increased risk of breast cancer to HRT. And everybody that was taking HRT came off HRT, and there was a big panic, and HRT was a very dirty word for a long time. But then further studies were done, and it was proven that that wasn't really the case, and it was a bit of misinformation. But when you look at the benefits of it, so not everyone can have HRT. And what I have to say is my sponsor for Miss Great Britain was an amazing platform called Owning Your Menopause. Owning Your Menopause is an online platform where you can do workouts to build muscle. There's meal plans, there's nutrition coaches, sleep coaches. It's a whole community with amazing tools that you can use to help your menopause. The founder of that is Kate Roham. Kate and I went to school together. She's the same age as me. She's in my class at school. She's written a book called Fitter, Calmer, Stronger in 30 Days, and it's like a bestseller at the moment. She's an amazing woman. And I have to say, I would be doing her a disservice, having been sponsored by her and been an advocate for her platform, that HRT is not the sole answer to everybody's problems. I must preface what we say. I am taking HRT, but it isn't right for everybody. And not everybody can take it. There are some people who can't. So we don't have to say that that is the best solution, because for some people it's not. However, there are proven benefits. So problems that women encounter in later life, health-wise, cardiovascular disease. So actually, women in midlife have heart attacks. Everybody thinks it's men, but it's women having heart attacks. And that is because the collagen that you lose after the age of 30, every year your collagen levels deplete. The collagen keeps your arteries nice and supple. And so your arteries harden up and then you have heart attacks. So another problem that women have in later life is dementia. Women are twice as likely to have dementia. There are 2 times as many dementia patients as there are male dementia patients. Females outrank men 2 to 1. Nobody really knows why, but again, vascular dementia, it's all to do with your vascular system. So HRT, again, is helpful in can be helpful in warding off dementia. So there is a link between being on HRT and a lower risk of dementia, a lower risk of a heart attack, and also, crucially, a lower risk of osteoporosis. And these are 3 really big health concerns for women, sort of 50 plus. Heart attacks, dementia, osteoporosis, that takes out a big section of, the health concerns for women in later life. HRT has a positive effect on all of those. But you have to start taking the HRT before you go through the menopause. So I don't know if you know this, I don't know if I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but the menopause is deemed to have happened to you when you have not had a period for 12 months. That's when they say you've gone through the menopause. So 12 months of nothing, then you're done. Before that point, you're perimenopausal. So ideally, you start your HRT before you've passed through the menopause, because the benefits are greater. Once all your hormone levels, estrogen, collagen, progesterone, everything have bottomed out with menopause, the benefits of the HRT aren't going to work for you long term. Does that make sense, the way I've said that? So yeah, if you want to start it as soon as you feel perimenopause getting its claws into you. That is sound advice. But lifting weights, which I know will be dear to your heart, is a very good way to manage perimenopause. So warding off osteoporosis, building lean muscle, keeping your tissues and connective tissues and everything moving, and really, really, really important, keeping mobile, keeping strong as you age. I'm a big advocate for lifting.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. That'll be great for me because I do go to the gym. I love doing the gym.
But lots of women who aren't gym bunnies, it's quite scary when you say you've got to start going to the gym. Oh, and by the way, I want you to start weightlifting, and they go, "Don't be ridiculous." Because when I was young in the 80s, 90s, everybody wanted to be skinny, and everybody did keep fit and all these things to be thin. Everybody wanted to be thin. Nobody wanted to be strong. And now I always say to my daughter, you don't want to be thin. You want to be healthy and you want to be strong. You want to be athletic. You don't, but in my day, the goal was to be as thin as you could. So we've been programmed that thin is good, and therefore, why would I want to build muscle and weightlift? But actually, that's completely wrong. So you've got to challenge your what's programmed into your brain. It can be quite difficult to go, yeah, what I need to do is do some really big, heavy lift some big, heavy weights. And your brain's going, well, I don't get it. But then once you start doing it, you realise why it's good for you.
Yeah, I agree. So we are reaching kind of like the end, more or less, of the podcast, and we have that over 30 wisdom vault. So I have two questions to
Yes.
ask you. And the first one is for the younger generation. So what key piece of advice would you give to women in their 20s?
Wear the dress, go to the party, do it all, live it all, have it all. Don't worry about looking silly or feeling awkward or worrying about what people think about you. Who gives a toss? Do it. Have the fun. I got too tangled up in my own head a lot of the time in my 20s, and I was self-conscious, and I just think there's no time for that. Just, embrace life and suck every drop of fun out of it that you can. Because otherwise you look back and you'll regret, why didn't I do this or say that? Or better to do something and get something wrong than have a regret, I think.
And now we're gonna go with everybody
Mm-hmm.
that is over 30. So, what is a piece of
Mm-hmm.
unconventional advice that has helped you navigate your life after 30?
Oh, that's a good one. Unconventional advice. Well, I mean, entering a beauty pageant at 47 is pretty unconventional. I just think don't don't always take the expected option. Society puts a lot of expectation on women. Look demure, be quiet, toe the line, look after the kids, all of that, keep a nice home. There's all these labels attached to being a woman and all this expectation. And sometimes I think you've just got to do something for you, not necessarily in a selfish way, but just buck, buck the trend. And that could be start a business, that could be learn Mandarin, go on a yoga retreat in Bali. That it doesn't have to be enter a pageant, but just if it feels right, if and you want to do it and you have the means to do it, and don't worry about what everyone else thinks.
Perfect. I absolutely love it. I think we have covered quite a lot of information. I've learned a lot about perimenopause and menopause itself. Um, I believe, like, I was just gonna ask you, like, was it scary when you started, like, not being able to remember words? Were you thinking like you had something else, that it was not menopause?
I did think I had early onset dementia, because that can happen, right? I did genuinely for a while think that. And also, my sister, who is 2 years older than me, her husband died at 50. He died in 2020 during lockdown of brain cancer. He was completely fit and healthy, and one day he had an epileptic fit, and he had very advanced stage 4 brain cancer, and he died. And slightly alarmist of me, but that sticks with you. And I was like, do I have a brain tumor? Like, my brain's not working. And I became a bit cuckoo about it. And then my husband was like, you need to calm down on, that's a bit much. But I was like, but you don't know, do you? You just don't know. And then it all became apparent that it was menopause. But yeah, it was really, it was very weird.
I would have thought the same. I literally didn't want to say, like, did you think that you had a tumor? But that was, to me, Like if that
Yeah.
happened to me, I would be like, I have a tumor
It
in
was
in
a
my brain.
concern for very obvious reasons. Yeah.
How did your husband and your kids navigate this time with you when you were going through all these symptoms and nobody told you it was
So
actually
my husband now
being
is
very
very good because
menopause?
he understands a lot about it because I've researched a lot. I've read a lot of books. I'm quite knowledgeable. I've explained a lot of stuff to him. He's quite menopause aware now, but he wasn't. And he used to just say to me, "You're being nuts. Like, what is wrong with you?" Like, he thought I was losing the plot a little bit for a while. It caused a few maritals. We don't argue particularly very often, but when we did, it was generally caused because I was irrational and kind of anyway.
Going through menopause as well, like your
Mm-hmm.
hormones and everything, they're all over the place.
My
So
my husband, he has a 12-year-old daughter, so she's beginning on her hormone journey. She's just blossoming. And then he's got me at the other end and he's like, I don't stand a chance, do I? It's just estrogen everywhere. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. She's got too much and I haven't got enough. Yeah. He said, you're going to sync up as well, aren't you? That thing where women's cycles coordinate. I don't know if you've ever lived in a house with other women and you all sync up. He was like, you're going to do that, aren't you? I was like, yeah, probably.
is there anything that we might have not covered in this episode that you want us to
No, I
talk
don't think
about
so. I
before we
just think
finish?
that the premise of your podcast is very sound because for me, 30 feels like 5 minutes ago. Life is on fast forward. Like, honestly, 40 feels like 5 minutes. I mean, like 2 minutes ago, I went to New York for my 40th. I'm sure that was yesterday. So 30 to me is young. So thriving over 30, of course we blooming are, because that is like young. But the premise of the podcast is really sound because women over 30 have so much to offer and so much wisdom. And I really do think 30 for me was the absolute sweet spot. I was still completely, my best self physically, but I had wisdom and mental capacity. I think 30 is like a golden time, your 30s. So, yeah, just very well done for your podcast. The premise is very sound. So, watch all the episodes and get all the wisdom from all the ladies. That's what I'd say.
Yes, please, because in a way, as you said, like that's completely right. Like we are in our 30s, and when we were growing up, being in our 30s was seen as old already. But we were still young. I still feel very young. And as you said, I feel like I have all the tools right now to succeed even more than I have done maybe in my 20s with other things. I feel like very strong and powerful. And as you said, like, physically, I feel great. I look great. I have all the knowledge, all the experience.
I think it's about resilience and grit. And I think resilience and grit is very hard to have in your 20s. There are women out there who have it. There are young women who are very impressive. I could name a few that I've met through pageantry who are very impressive young women. Someone like Edison. Um, she's a successful businesswoman at 21 and storming the world. But there aren't so many in their 20s. But I think by the time you reach 30, you've got a capacity for resilience and grit and stamina and really good awareness of yourself and your power as a woman. And you can go out and just absolutely smash it.
Yeah. Oh, love to finish the podcast with that. That's perfect. Everybody that is hearing, remember that being in your 30s is not the end of the world. Arriving to your 30s is not the end of the world. You still have time to do many things. It's not the end of your path. It's not the end of the line. And actually, the best years are after 30.
Yeah.
I
The
definitely
30s
believe
is the
that.
beginning of the good stuff. I think the 20s are a little bit het up in being very self-conscious. I think by the time you're in your 30s, you care less. And the less you care with every decade that goes on, God, in my 50s, I'm going to be unbearable, I reckon. I've only got 2 years to go, and then I'm going to be like some absolute Fruit Loop in a good way. I don't know what's going to hit my husband, but yeah, 30s is just the one for me.
Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I had a really nice time. I hope you have a really good time as well. And for everybody that wants to follow you, follow your journey, learn more about menopause, perimenopause, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm Gina_Broadhurst. You can find me on Facebook as well. And if you go to the Miss GB official pages, you see my face plastered all over the shop. I'll be there until October, and then I shall be crowning another wonderful classic queen. So you'll be able to find me if you want me.
Well, you've heard it. Now you know where to find her. Thank you so much for everybody that is listening today, that has been listening to all of our episodes. Please remember to follow us on all our socials at Females Thriving Over 30, on Instagram and on TikTok. On TikTok, if you want to see really funny things, please make sure that you are there, because I'm getting Jasmine to do all crazy kind of TikToks. And you have to go and see them because you're going to have a great laugh. And yes, make sure that you also leave your comments on the kind of content that you would like to see, guests that you would like us to have on the podcast. And see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.